Morning, everyone. I'm Eunsaem Ahn, an artist working in painting and collage. In preparing this presentation, I revisited my work from its earliest stages. Through this process, I realized that despite exploring various methods across different media, my work ultimately converges upon a common concern. I wish to share with you the visual outcomes of that journey. When we see a landscape, its appearance seems natural and self-evident. Yet, if we strip away meaning and symbolism, tracing only its outlines, the scene becomes an overlay of strange and unfamiliar lines. The degree to which a curve bends, the length and proportion of a straight line, whether squares or perfect squares or rectangles, these differences convey significantly distinct nuances to me. I explore these subtle variations in form within my paintings. When I first began painting earnest, I would recognize the forms I discovered along an object's outline as patterns and paint accordingly. At that time, I was more interested in how the subject looked and what kind of shape roles it possessed than in the subject itself or its meaning. I was particularly interested in the starting points of early geometric abstractionists such as Kandinsky, Mondrian, and Malevich, and was also influenced by their approach to abstracting reality and their tendency to view abstraction and the spiritual as interconnected. After painting so many works, both large and small, I found myself re-evaluating my approach to painting when I held a solo exhibition featuring oil paintings. At the time, when painting, I used a variety of tools such as rollers, spatulas, quizzes, rulers, and compasses. I found myself distinguishing which tool to use and how to draw each line. For instance, some lines required thick application by dipping the ruler in paint, while others demanded a breathy, almost hesitant touch. Still others necessitated swift execution. This depended largely on the line's position and what lay beside it. I gathered the lines used in the painting. The first line was made with a short spatula, and the second was neatly traced with masking tape. If if you were to draw quickly along a ruler or dip paint onto the ruler to create the line, you would get a different result. So when I moved these resulting pieces around, it felt as though each had its own designated places. I was curious why these differences in feel occurred. So I began to consider other senses that could convey it, and to me, this felt akin to a sense of weight. Dense lines feels heavy, while pale, swiftly drawn lines feels light. To me, heavy lines are crucial ones capable of bearing the weight of their assigned surface, whereas certain lines flow lightly and serve a supporting role. I believe this order could apply not only to lines, but to other elements as well. There were colors I frequently used for backgrounds and colors that took on the role of protagonists. In terms of angles, acute lines felt heavier to me than obtuse ones. Squares took precedence over rectangles, lines over surfaces, and bundles over single elements. While organizing these charts, I realized that while I fundamentally enjoy drawing freely, I also find myself continually viewing the characteristics of form through a numerical lens. Here, numerical refers less to mathematics and more to active listing, counting, and continually seeking patterns within that process. Reflecting on the drawings I'd made over time, I created weight drawings. I separated each element within the picture, listing them from lightest to heaviest, and assigned the unit grams to each element, giving them individual weights. When all these weights are added together, the total weight of the single picture determines. For instance, in this painting, I titled 315 grams. I disassembled every element within the picture, then set the lightest element to 1 gram and calculate the weight of the other elements relative to this. The resulting image is 315 descending order on the right. Therefore, this weight is not a physical, directly measured weight. The weight varies depending on the color, surface, thickness, and position of the elements composing it. I consider this arbitrary result to be a unique order inherent to the image, distinct from the sensibilities of mathematics or science. I personally refer to the painting on the right as a template painting. It exists as another image that explains the original painting. I enjoy creating these kinds of instruction manual style illustrations for paintings. While it differs from the traditional way of viewing art, for me, it's one method of rapidly studying a single painting. Next, I extracted all the colors used in 315 grams and created an image by converting them into complementary colors. This could be described as an image composed of the colors I used the least, and adding all these elements together resulted in 274 grams. So on the left, it shows the colors from 315 grams and their complementary colors. You can find a table displaying their digitized color codes on the right. After that, I began actively creating collages. Collage is more useful than painting for immediately transferring and attaching elements. While painting fills the canvas through the act of drawing, I wanted to create images through the assembly of appropriate lines and colors. Initially, I created them by attaching thin pieces of wood and waste pieces of plastic fabric. This is the desk where I first made collages. On this small desk, I held tweezers and moved and attached elements with minute adjustments. So this is my second solo exhibition, which was primarily a collage show titled Shifting 3 centimeters. 3 centimeter is roughly equivalent to 1 inch in length. When I previously painted, I used my entire body moving in units of meters. This work signifies movement in a much smaller unit between millimeters and meters. I created small collage paintings incorporating characteristics of power and weight that can be conveyed through form. The sharpness derived from acute angles, squares with a sense of rhythm, numbers, and repetition based on calendars. I captured these characteristics, which I spent and which have continued from my earlier paintings within the artwork. These photographs shows the process of making the frame to hold the collage. I found the process of selecting and applying colors to match the paintings quite enjoyable, so I wanted to take a picture of this. Subsequently, I have been creating collages of a slightly larger scale. This work consists of 2 pieces forming a pair. The left image was created with the intention of adding colors within the blue hue, and then elements from that image were reintroduced to produce the right image, achieving the same result at identical dimensions. I've given some thought to make the previously mentioned template painting appear a little more painterly. This work also explores the potential for expanding collage further. This piece was exhibited in last year's Gallery SP Trio show. At the time, I hung the collage on a large wall with a ceiling height exceeding 3 meters. Rather than attaching the elements beforehand, I carried them to the site and assembled them together during installation. Through the installation, the surfaces that had been fixed to the frame became somewhat more variable, allowing elements that had been part of the painting to become complete image in their own. Next, I like to discuss drawing. There was a time when I used to draw quite frequently, perhaps because painting or collage requires planning before you begin. So I began them, I find them somewhat more of a social or official medium. Drawing, on the other hand, strike me as a far more private medium. When I draw, my thoughts naturally become organized, and occasionally it feels rather like writing in a diary. The one on the far left is drawing, paying homage to a questionnaire once used at the Bauhaus. Others are the content summarizes matters concerning colors and form, angle, speed, and proportion. At one time, I gathered outlines of various places. I found it fascinating how the outlines alone could suggest the atmosphere of a location and the fairy tale like feeling that came from it. The places included the Hantan River in Gangwon-do, a garden from a video game I played, a fairy tale village in Incheon, and an indoor gymnasium I saw in a dream. I collected them using colors and layouts suited to each places. These drawings are ones I sketched daily, one or two at a time, like entries in a diary, capturing my emotions and my daily life at that time. Whereas the things I mentioned earlier were about art, these drawings contain a little more of a reality and the world around us. The shifting dynamics seen in games like tag or dice, the speed of snowflakes falling from the sky, the rhythm of breath held and released while swimming. I realized these elements aren't fundamentally different from the relationship of force within the elements I've been drawing. I seek to convey and metaphorically represent the shifts in power and weight revealed through art, acknowledging that they are not confined to the realm of art itself. I find that my endeavor to achieve balance and strive for a state of harmony within my paintings ultimately mirrors the way the world operates. Thus, I am researching phenomena and objects in reality that can convey this. These shells were gathered from various beaches of East Sea. Observing them, I noticed a lineage in their shapes. For instance, the reddish brown shells, though varying size, they are circular in shape, while the shells with patterns on a white background all have a broad horizontal form. I found it fascinating that even these tiny shells possess a lineage of form, and I thought I could discover metaphors for living beings at such a minute scale. Thus, I created a collage inspired by the sight of shells lying in a specimen box. Guided by my belief that certain principles and laws govern the objects around me, I began to observe them closely. For instance, I sought to categorize the forms of grass blades on a lawn or to derive architectural principles from the woodblock toys young children play with. I assigned numbers to the grass in order of lightness according to its form and color, then created a lawn where those numbers gathered in place of grass itself. Also, I built a castle and bridge using a wooden blocks I played with as a child. It is the process of small units adding together to form a structure. Finally, this work is part of a series I've been developing recently, a collage linking dates recorded in the calendar with puzzle games. The numbers are set based on the actual past days when it snowed, and this nonogram puzzle is designed to reveal the snowing scenery. It seems this kind of record could become another way of containing order. At the end of this month, I have a two-person exhibition at a place called Space Catalog in Ujiro. If you come then, you should be able to see the work in person. Recently, I've also developed an interest in conceptual artists, working with numbers and records as themes. So I'm studying while progressing with this work. Thus, I have observed countless relationships supporting one another as they oscillate between heaviness and lightness, seeking equilibrium. Within this, the orders I create are, I believe, less complete answers and more akin to attempts. The very process of continually shifting, adjusting, attaching and detaching remains a source of joy for me and seems to be the reason I paint. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
감사합니다.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I stopped the sharing. We can now start with the Q&A. Thank you so much for this.